Well, hello, Betty, and welcome to About Freedom Show.
Thank you so much for having me.
I appreciate very much you being here. So we're just gonna start right away with your NDE, if you don't mind.
Yeah, I have to paint a little bit of a backstory so that people can
Yeah,
understand the events leading up to the near death experience.
definitely.
But basically, I was a drug addict for over 22 years, and my life was very immersed in darkness and depravity, isolation, degradation, everything that goes along with addiction. And I was very impoverished. I was homeless. And my parents were both active addicts. In 2007, I experienced a very traumatic loss. My parents both committed suicide together due to their own addiction. And so for the rest of my life, my addiction became my parent, and it also became my higher power. I was a staunch militant atheist. I did not believe in anything more because if I did, then I'd have to be held accountable for the way that I was living my life. That was my thought process anyway. So I stayed strung out for a really long time, and my dis-ease of addiction continued to progress more and more over the course of my life. I lost a boyfriend to his addiction. Well, it wasn't even really his addiction. He didn't even like using drugs. He just really liked me. And yeah, he ended up dying of a cocaine overdose. His heart exploded. And that death made me feel so guilty and so full of shame. And I saw the pain in his parents, and I felt completely responsible. And so I made this deal with myself that I would do this insane amount of substances. And if I didn't die, I would go get help. And I woke up and I did go get help, and I tried to do recovery, but it just wasn't my time. And I went back out, and my life just evaporated the last couple of years of my active addiction. And my addiction had progressed so much that I ended up overdosing in March of 2019. And that's when I had this really transformative spiritual experience, a near death like experience. And I'll take you through what that was like. So I have some language for it today. And what I experienced was a spontaneous Kundalini awakening. And if you don't know what Kundalini is, that's okay. Neither did I. It roughly translates into life force. So I had a life force energy activation, awakening. All of my chakra systems became activated and online all at the exact same moment. And I didn't know what a chakra was. I didn't know what any of this was. I just thought that I was in the midst of drug-induced psychosis for throughout my experience. So as my third eye and my crown chakra opened, it felt like my spirit flew out of my body, out of the top of my head. And that's when I started to experience this near death like event that happened. And my first part of the experience was a life review. And, I'm not just a traumatized person. I'm a traumatized person who traumatized other people. I caused myriads of abuse to others in my life. I mean, real tangible harm. And so I started to experience all of those things, not only from my point of view as the abuser, but also from the people that I victimized. And that felt like hell. And then I also experienced the death of my parents, not only from the perspective of a grieving daughter all over again, but also from their perspective. And so I felt the ocean of anguish and despair that they were experiencing the moments leading up to their suicide. And that was incredibly painful. I thought, oh, okay, I died and now I'm stuck in hell. This is the feeling that I have. It felt like every cell in my body was covered in static and spikes and concrete, and it was so heavy. And then I started to hear these masculine voices, and they were saying, you are worthy of all the love in the universe. You are worthy of all the love in the universe. And so I started to follow those voices. And that was when I was guided into the light. And I experienced my mission was downloaded to me. So as I traveled into the light, my father and my boyfriend were two of those masculine voices. So that was very comforting to me. It was familiar. I knew who they were, and that's why I followed it. And the other voice was my own masculine energy. And somehow I knew all of these things. I don't know how, but I knew everything. And I found myself, and I was landed on the deck of a spaceship. That's what felt like anyway. That's what it looked like in my mind's eye. And I was surrounded by thousands of other souls. And in the center was a commander. And you can call the commander Christ or Krishna or Buddha, whatever language resonates for you, because it's all the same. And so in the center, this commander is gearing us all up for our trip to Earth. And all the souls are super psyched and everybody's glowing very brightly and we're all excited for our mission. And then my awareness shifts to another scene and everything is happening simultaneously all at the exact same moment. So as my awareness shifts, I find myself in front of a table of beings. And the way that it appeared in my mind's eye, it was just this crappy card table. And there were these wonderful, the language I have for it now is some sort of ascended masters. They didn't tell me who they were, but they didn't have to, because I knew that they were people in charge. And I knew that they were in charge of my mission, my life. And they had this big, huge book and they were thumbing through the book and they said, okay, it's good to see you. You're not here to stay. You're only here for information. And I was so combative. I mean, I was like, you guys aren't talking to me, right? Because I don't know where I am, but I know that it feels groovy and I am staying here. It feels way better than where I just was. And then everything started to come back to me. Okay, I'm home. These are the people that are supposed to help me. And I just transformed into this small child. And I was saying, I will not go back. I said, you guys do not actually prepare us for what Earth is like. And I will not go back. You cannot make me. And they said, yeah, you've said this before. They said, you're here to learn about your pre-birth plan to help you on the next part of your mission. So then my awareness shifted to another scene. And I found myself, it looked a lot like a video game. And that could be because of the generation that I'm born in, or it could be because we're living in a simulation. You take your pick. But there was this man who greeted me and he was wearing a plaid blazer and a fedora and he had this big empty grocery cart and he said, okay, pick your life. And so I started traveling down these grocery store aisles, and on the walls of the grocery store aisles were these gigantic cereal boxes, and every cereal box had a life experience on it. And so I knew that I was coming to Earth for this great awakening with these thousands of other soldiers that I had perceived in the first part of my experience. And so I knew that I was coming to transmute negative energy, not only for my soul and the family line that I was choosing to be born into, but also for the collective itself. And so I needed to pick really dense experiences, and a lot of them. So I start grabbing all these boxes: childhood sexual trauma, poverty, homelessness, addiction, dereliction. I picked my parents, the family line that I would be born into, all of the trauma that went along with that. And then I also had picked things that I hadn't experienced yet, like overcoming, recovery, triumph, spiritual awakening, being an author, being a speaker. But none of those things had happened yet in my life, so it didn't resonate. And every time that I picked a cereal box, if it was an experience that involved another soul, I saw the other soul come out with the cereal box, and we would come orb to orb with each other, and we would make a contract with one another. And the one that sticks out very vividly for me, and the one I think is very important to share about, is the man who molested me as a small child. When I picked that life experience, we came orb to orb with each other, we came into contract, and I saw the reasons why. And one of the main reasons was that I had been his abuser in the same capacity in a previous life. And so we were balancing the energy for each other in this lifetime. And also the fact that we were transmuting this experience for the collective itself. Now, my human cannot understand how a life experience like childhood sexual trauma could be better for the evolvement of consciousness, better for the evolvement of my own spirit. But today I have unwavering faith that my soul has a plan, and I don't have to know all of the reasons why the plan is the way that it is. I just trust and believe that it's all working out not only for my highest good, but for the collective's highest good as well. So I'm taken through the details of my pre-birth plan. I find myself back in front of the table of beings. I thank them endlessly. I mean, I'm telling you, it felt like 2 tons of bondage and weight had been released from my spirit in the moment of having this knowing. instilled inside of me. Things had no longer happened to me. They actually had happened for me, because on some soul level, I had chosen it for the evolvement of myself. And that is the kind of freedom that I had been searching for my whole life. And I was so thankful and so grateful. And I said, you guys have just put so many puzzle pieces together for me. Thank you so, so much. I will still not be returning to that dumpster fire that you guys call Earth. I am totally cool just hanging out here. I'm going to watch the show from up here, from the comfort of my own home. I'll grab my pajamas and a bowl of popcorn. I'm not going back. I said, I definitely cannot go back into her. And I could perceive my body outside of myself on my bathroom floor. And I said, she's glitched. She needs way too much healing. There's no way to accomplish that. And they said, okay, you don't have to go back into her, but you do most certainly have to go back, not as a punishment, but because you're here for the Great Awakening. You signed up for the transformation of consciousness, and you're here for the most exciting time to be on Earth. So we'll show you the baby that you'll have to be reborn into. And so they showed me this little baby and everything about her. It was like a video game. I saw the avatar, and then I saw all the stats next to the avatar. And they showed me her personality, her gender, her ethnicity, where she would be born, who her parents would be, all of her adversity and all of her opportunity to overcome. And she was going to take my life cart. And then because of the family line that she was going to be born into, she had some of her own things inside the cart piled on top of it. And I thought, whoa, if these are my only options, starting from zero or going back into that glitched body that I just came from, I'm just going to go back from where I just came from, because I can't start over. And they told me very vividly, it sticks out very predominantly in my mind. They said, listen to us. The first part of your life was boot camp, and the second part of your life will be carrying out your mission. You're going to be living in spiritual awareness. You're going to have mentors and teachers and soulmates and kindred spirits, and you're not going to be doing this alone. It's not going to be nearly as challenging. Trust us. And I just remember looking back at them as my awareness was sifting back into my body and saying, I do not trust you guys. And that is my spiritual experience in heaven.
I didn't understand one thing. You said that they told you that you're gonna reincarnate in a little baby. So you came back like yourself, the same. How old you were when this happened?
35.
35. So you came back as a 35 Betty, right? So why they say that you reincarnate in a child?
They gave me the choice. They said I could either go back into my body or I could go into the baby.
Got it.
And so that baby still exists somewhere. She was on schedule to be born, and another soul stepped into that mission and had its own life experience cart with that baby.
So that's an interesting picture you painted here. You are guys, all these souls excited to go to Earth to get all this crazy experience for evolvement or whatever, for awakening, etc. And you are in the same boat or bus, whatever you can call it, with the souls that are ready to go and be born on the Earth. You are ready to just come back. So it's the same team.
Yes. Well, everything's happening simultaneously, all at the exact same moment. So the concept of time and birth and all of these things, we perceive them in a linear way. So I don't think that all of those souls were born at the end of November in 1983 like me. But I do believe that because of the idea of the multiverse and multiple timelines and all of these huge, gigantic concepts that are just gigantic, I know that we're all on the same team. Now, we might have been born in different generations. We might have picked different parts of Earth timeline to come in on. But I do know that we're all part of the same spiritual team for sure.
Okay, and the commander, you said there was a commander. Maybe there was Jesus, maybe there was Buddha, maybe there was Krishna. You don't know, but I mean, does it have a face, a figure, or just a feeling? How did you
Feeling,
experience? Yes, just a feeling. You didn't see any light or something, no?
So basically, the way that my mind's eye perceived it was that all the other souls, the soldiers, were light bodies. So looked like human form, but no features, just light. And then in the center, it was just this effervescent source of light. And so the way that I perceive it now is like Christ consciousness or Krishna consciousness, but Christ and Krishna are the same character in the story. And Buddha is just one more of these enlightened teachers that they're all teaching the same thing. So depending on what culture you come from, that's what is going to resonate. And so for me, coming as an atheist, I mean, obviously I live in the Western world, I live in America. So Jesus is the figure that I would recognize the most just from the society that I live in. But if you live in another society, you would perceive a different entity.
But you said those figures, they were like human-like figures. But then you said that you came close orb to orb.
So the way that I perceive it, yeah, the way that I perceive it is that in the pre-birth planning process, we're nothing but these little orbs. And then when we're actually getting ready for the mission to come to Earth, we're coming more into sort of this body shape. And it also could be because the spaceship, where I saw the commander and all the other soldiers, that was the first part of my experience. So I needed to perceive it more like human form to actually understand. And then as I went further and further into the experience, I saw maybe what we actually really look like more, which really just is a spark of light.
Did you feel that you lost any of your personality when you were there, or you were the same exact Betty?
I definitely lost some aspects of my personality. But I could still perceive an individual personality. Like I still perceived that I was an individual soul, but I know that because of the law of oneness that I'm actually just one with everything that is. But I did still perceive, like, my experience is very funny. And that is definitely part of my personality, is bringing some of that humor back with me. But yeah, I did still perceive a bit of a personality. And I think that might be because I was definitely going to have to come back.
So let's say a soul is about to die and is moving towards the light and disappears into the light. This is it. The soul loses all the personality, all individuality. It just becomes one with God. There is no more Betty. That's it, just light.
Well, I'm going to reference some literature that helped me understand these really big concepts. So when I read Michael Newton's Journey of Souls and Robert Schwartz's Your Soul's Plan, these are men, these are doctors who took people back into regression for in between lives soul contracts. So I think that every soul has the opportunity to either merge back with source or to come back and reincarnate. And because everything is totally instant, because there's no such thing as time in eternity, it's just this instant flash. So I do think that souls sign up to come back here over and over and over again because there's nothing else to do. What else are you going to do? You're just going to chill in heaven and be unconditionally loved? How boring. That's only one emotion. So I think that we instantly decide to design another life. And I think that we can take some of the lessons from our previous lives. Like I know that in my current life, I'm transmuting lessons from previous lives that I did not complete in that lifetime. And that's why all my stuff is so stacked up. Another one of the reasons why I have had so many different challenges in life, because I didn't get to transmute them in previous lives. So I think that there is an aspect of the soul personality that continues to come. And again, I see everything a lot like a video game. Like if I got through the game and I accomplished one part of it, but the game is infinite, so I want to go back and accomplish another part of it. So, but I don't necessarily have to leave all of that knowledge with up there.
I'm probably the only one who didn't play any video games. I didn't play any video games ever,
Me
I
neither.
feel,
I only have ever played Sonic the Hedgehog. It doesn't really help
yeah.
me in the whole simulation theory, but that was a huge download for me, is that life is a game. It's a school, it's a play, like whatever language, it's all, it's all something else. Like it's not what we think it is.
Okay, so let's come back to this again. I'll call it point of no return. So let's say a soul passes this point of no return. No more earth. That's it. Go into the light. Is that real death, infinity? Let's say, Betty, you're not Betty anymore. You would never be Betty. You don't know that you are Betty. You don't know what's going on at all. You're just part of light. If you would go into the gate, into the light, that's it. You die. You dead. So what do you think? Do we die or are we still alive in heaven?
Well, there's no such thing as death. Death is an illusion. The idea of physical death, like a body can die, but your spirit never does. And so I believe that when the body is finished, the spirit is released from this tiny little cage that we're in, that we perceive that we're inside of this physical form. So I don't know exactly what happens when we die. I mean, I have a bunch of theories around it. Sometimes there's this one theory. It's funny because I was just listening to it this morning before we started recording, and I think that you might actually get a re-entry point. So let's say that you go back and you watch your life review and you're like, oh, wow, I wish that I did this, or I wish that I did that. And you can decide if you want to go back and experience it in the same body, and you can pick a starting point. So, wow, I wish I made a different decision when I was 23, not to go down that street, but to go down that street instead. Maybe when you actually leave form, you have the opportunity to come back and live this life all over again. Or maybe you decide to live another life. So I do think that you can have experiences in other galaxies too. It's not just here. Earth is not the only school that exists. So this is the most challenging school, and it's the densest school because we believe in, the 3D sort of tangible inside of a body experience. I think that it's infinity. And I also think that when you leave form, whatever you believe is the reality that you'll create. So, there's a couple of near death experiencers who have had really dark experiences and they perceive that they went to hell. And it's because that's what they believed would happen to them before their experience, because they were, immersed inside of organized religion that scared them into this fear-based thinking that they will go to hell. And so I think that that's a big part of it too. We are the most divine co-creators on the planet, and we get to design our whole conception and belief system and everything. So I don't think that it's only one thing for each person. I think that it's completely an individual creative process for every conscious being.
Okay, so you said that the souls make a decision to come back to Earth to continue their school and are excited and stuff like that. But why every NDE, I don't remember, probably almost everyone says, no, I didn't want to come back, I didn't want to come back. But the figure told me, you have to come back. How do you explain?
So I know a couple of near death experiencers that did say that they wanted to come back. I'm like, you guys are crazy. But we do come back over and over again. I heard somebody use this really great example, and I'm going to use it now. So women have babies, right? They go through this 9-month gestation period, which is super uncomfortable, very painful to carry around a baby inside of your body. And then they go through this horrible process of childbirth, which is also equally incredibly painful. And then they get their little end result and they have their baby and they're like, oh my goodness, unconditional love. I love this. Oh my God, I forgot all about all of the pain that I went through. Childbirth, like none of it even matters because I have this little bundle of joy inside my hands right now. And then they do it again. They have multiple children. They go through all of that pain and agony of carrying a baby, birthing a baby, and having a baby all over again because the reward is so worth it. So I think that people continue to reincarnate and come back to Earth for more life experience because they don't even care about all the pain and suffering. They know that the end result is unconditional love when they get to return back to their source. I think that we come here to forget so that we can remember. And I don't think that coming back to Earth is a punishment. At first, I did think it was a punishment. I was like, oh my goodness, I'm stuck in purgatory. I can't believe they sent me back here. This is totally crazy. Earth is whatever you decide to make it. So wherever I keep my thoughts. So if I want to see Earth as hell, or I want to see Earth as purgatory, then it will be that. But today I have different thoughts. And so I've decided that Earth is heaven. I'm actually bringing heaven here in every moment that I get to consciously connect with other people, and every moment that I get to be of service to others. And so I choose to stay in this idea that I am bringing heaven to earth in every waking moment of my life. So I don't think of it as a punishment anymore. I know that we're all here for something really exciting. Something exciting is happening. I would not have been awoken otherwise. I know that much.
Why you decided to come back to Earth? You could have go to another easier planet. And why the souls are so excited to come to Earth? How do you explain that? Because they know how hard it's going to be, or they don't know about it.
No, I think that we forget how hard it is. Just like in childbirth, you forget how painful it is because you don't care, because you just want the end result. And the end result is transformation and also evolvement for the individual soul personality profile. So I do think that I am experiencing life in other dimensions on other galaxies right now, because everything is happening simultaneously all at the exact same moment, which is a hard concept to grasp. But
It
I do
is.
think that I'm other places right now as well. My soul is infinite, so it can do anything. I do think that I came to Earth came back to Earth. Number one, because I didn't really have a choice, although they told me that my original choice was made. So like I can't decide 8 months in not to have the baby. I have to continue and birth the baby. So it's like you already made your choice. There's no way to go back now. Like you're more than halfway there. So I think that is one of the main reasons why I came back to Earth. Also, because we're in the midst of the Great Awakening. And I think a lot of the souls that are incarnate right now signed up to witness the transformation of consciousness. We are evolving as a species, as a consciousness. We are evolving.
This was actually my next question to ask you about this great awakening. How do you explain? So you decided to come back to Earth, and maybe the first time when you incarnated 35 years ago before your NDE, you wanted to come here for the great awakening. Why is this great awakening so important? Because it's a faster evolution for the soul? This is another reason there is all 8 billion people on Earth right now, because everybody wants to get awakened quick. How do you explain this?
So I think that the Great Awakening, well, the information that I was downloaded with is it's a transformation of thought. So we're here to witness the fact that everyone will have a transformation of thought. The whole collective consciousness will. Now, I don't think that every living being is a part of the collective consciousness, but I do think that we're here to witness the shift of that. So if we can have the majority of people switch from an ego-centered thought system to a spirit-centered thought system, which is what the Great Awakening is all about, going from a third dimensional level of thinking to a fifth dimensional level of thinking, then we can sway the entire collective itself. And so the majority of people will think in that spirit-centered thought system. So I think that many of us signed up to be here right now for this shift because it's supposed to be very exciting. Now, again, everything is a story. This is a story that I tell myself, but it's a story that I was downloaded with in my spiritual experience. And then I found confirmation from the internet. I'm telling you, I was so spiritually dead and asleep before my experience. I didn't even know how to spell the word spiritual. I had never heard of a chakra, the Great Awakening. I don't know what that is. So when I had all that information downloaded and then I found confirmation of it online, I thought, oh my God, my experience was real. This is a real thing that people talk about. I had never conceptualized consciousness before. That's definitely a word that I didn't know how to spell either. But so for me, I know that this is what's happening because it was part of my download. And then I found confirmation of it in the world around me.
When you were born 35 years ago before your NDE, you came for the Great Awakening, but you didn't experience the Great Awakening for 35 years. You were spiritually dead, like you said, completely spiritually dead. You were moving actually in completely different direction of spirituality and from awakening. So how do you compare yourself to that person that were before 2019 and after that NDE?
Wow. Yeah, that's a great question. I am a completely reborn person. So I think the first part of my life was really about learning everything the wrong way. And I think that's for everybody. You don't have to have had a traumatized childhood to have learned things the wrong way. Our society is set up in a way that we mislearn everything. Not, especially in the Western world, our society is not set up to teach us about spirituality, autonomy, individuality, creativity. We don't have any of those things that are taught to us, right? We go to schools from the time that we're little kids and we're taught to be like everybody else, fit into a box, pick a box. You can only pick certain boxes. You got to be an accountant or a lawyer or something else that doesn't really spark joy for many people. So I think that the first part of my life was about learning everything the wrong way, so that in the second part of my life, I could begin to relearn and reprogram. And at first, that seemed like a very daunting task. Number one, I had to learn how to live my life without using drugs. And I had never experienced that in any part of my life. I had been using drugs since I was 13 years old. So I had to learn how to do that. And that was its own mission for sure. And then I had to learn how to integrate my spiritual experience, to find the spiritual texts that would help me along my way, to find my soul family and my soul tribe. That was a big part of my integration process as well. So I really think that I'm not going to claim truth for everybody, but I'll just talk about me. For me, it was really about learning things the wrong way so that I could relearn them in a more spiritual light.
Okay, let me come back to your story about your parents. That was astonishing story. You said they committed suicide together. How did it happen? If you want to share that.
Yeah, absolutely. So my parents were very impoverished. They were strung out on drugs. This was in 2007, so it was the height of the Oxycontin epidemic, and they were prescribed over 600 pills each every month. And they were always running out of pills. This is like how they made money. They would sell some pills, they would eat most of the pills, and then, at some point it shifted, where it used to be like sell most of them, eat some of them, and then one day it shifted and it was eat most of them, sell some of them. And they would always run out. And so every month they were going through withdrawals, and it was withdrawal from opiates is the most painful experience because there's nothing actually physically wrong with you. You don't have any cuts on you. There's nothing going on. No one's beating you, but it literally feels like your bones are made of fire. It is so insanely painful. And it's why so many people stay strung out on on substances for so long. And they just couldn't take the pain anymore. They were about to be evicted for the millionth time. We were always getting evicted. We moved all the time when I was a kid. The lights were turned off. The gas was turned off. And I had my sister at my house for her weekend from work. And they called us on their little prepaid cell phone. And they said, keep your sister at your house because there's no lights and there's no hot water. There's no point in her coming back here. And so it was just a totally normal conversation. And they just said, okay, I love you. Tell your sister that I love her. And that was it. And then the next day we didn't hear from them. And so when I went to drop my sister back off at her house, that's when we discovered them. And they had taken an overdose of pills together. They had left notes, and they were very brief, and they didn't explain much of anything, but they didn't even have to explain anything because I understood. I understood from the point of an addict because I was an addict as well. And, I know that they saw themselves as burdens because in a way they were burdens, and they weren't burdens to the point that I would say leave Earth. But, today I have done a lot of healing work around that. And I believe that it all happened for a divine purpose. I don't think that it was necessarily part of our pre-birth plan with each other, but I do believe that they picked lives where this would be a very high probability that something like this would happen.
Yeah, so that was probably traumatizing for you, probably, on top of everything that you were going through. So, do you think they chose this kind of life and they chose this kind of death before they came on Earth?
I don't, I've gone back and forth. And my father is my number one spirit guide, by the way. He's always with me. So I also have very strong intuition around the multiverse. So I believe that in my parents' suicide, a bunch of different timelines fractured off because I don't think that I don't know if suicide is anybody's actual planned exit point. And I'm not, again, I can't claim this truth for everybody. Maybe some other spiritual people have different information, but for me, this is what helps me. And in Robert Schwartz's book, Your Soul's Gift, there's a whole chapter based around pre-birth planning and suicide. And so I always recommend that book to anybody who's experienced a lot of trauma. There's a chapter about molestation, there's a chapter about incest, about miscarriage, about rape. Like, it's really an amazing book if you're having a hard time accepting trauma in your life.
So you planned your life, the hard part of your life before your birth, and you planned the second part of your life that you are living right now when you had your NDE. So you had 2 times you planned it, right?
No, no, everything was already planned before I came into form.
Because you said that when you came back and you said, no, 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 I'm not coming back. This is so groovy here. I love it here. They said, no, no, you have to do this and you have to do this. It's going to be better. You already forgot your plan?
So, like I said, in the grocery cart, there was life experiences in there that I had not experienced yet. One of them was spiritual awakening and the other was recovery. Those were 2 things that were nowhere on my radar. So, pre-birth planning is about the major plot points. It's not like every aspect of my life is predetermined, okay? The major plot points of my life are predetermined. Now, I could have experienced spiritual awakening and recovery 15 years before I did. But I decided to keep exercising my own free will as a human and repeating cycles over and over and over again, making U-turns, making loops, going all around this little plot scenario. I could have gone in a linear line and let it play out the way that my soul had originally designed it, still exercising my free will in between those plot points. But I just would not step on to the path. And I had been exposed to recovery. I mean, obviously, after my parents died, there was a very loud voice in my head that said, you should let go of drugs. They just killed your parents. But there was another voice in my head that said, you can't let go of drugs. It's all that you have left of them. They are drugs and you are them. And so you must stay tethered to your addiction. And that voice just seemed simpler. It seemed to make more sense and it was much louder and more convincing. And so that's what I did for the rest of my experience. But I could have jumped onto that recovery and spiritual awakening path much sooner. And I would not have had a spiritual awakening like the one that I did. It would have been a slow and steady, gradual awakening where I came into awareness instead of the experience that I had where it was like a bucket of ice water being dumped on my head. Like, here's all of your awareness all at once now. So, depending on who you are, some people are really jealous of near-death experiences. And they're like, oh, I wish I had an experience like that.
I read some reviews or some comments. I wish I had an NDE. I said, I don't know what you're talking about, man.
It's crazy. I mean, like, my life was complete and utter chaos for, after it was, your eyes are completely opened when they've been glued shut. For me, some people have near-death experiences that are already in spiritual awareness, and I'm sure that it's much easier for them. For me, it was 0 awareness to 1,000,000 awareness all in 1 second. So it was a really jarring experience for me. And I love listening to people that are on the slow and steady spiritual journey because it's the opposite of what I experienced. And we always want what we don't have.
Wow. So let's come back to the not the spiritual but the physical part of the event.
So I had taken a lot of drugs. I took a lot of substances, and I had a very large substance log every day. Every day I was on at least 6 different substances. And I'm talking like hardcore drugs, not like, yeah, I was really a mess. But this particular day I decided to take extra. And so in doing that, I ended up having this awakening that was catalyzed by the experience of taking too many substances.
So how you came back? What was did you go to the hospital? What happened? How did you come back to life?
So after the experience, I just assumed that it was drug-induced psychosis. I said, wow, that was crazy. I was so high. I'll never be that high ever again. That was nuts. And I just went on living my life the way that I was. So I continued to use drugs. I continued to manipulate people. I continued to prostitute myself. I continued to do whatever I needed to do to get the next one, to continue to just stay sedated and medicated and on drugs. And then my world got super tiny. And the universe made it impossible for me to continue using. One of the things that happened was I could no longer get drugs. Like all of my dealers all decided to change their lives and stop selling at the exact same moment. People that did not know each other. It was bizarre. And then drugs just stopped working. And so I would buy drugs from strangers, or I would go to places where I knew I could get them, and it never worked. And I would just waste my money, and I would get, and so then I was in the middle of heroin withdrawal, which is really super painful. And I was on day 3, which is the worst day. I was sick all over myself, writhing in pain, hot and cold sweats, welcoming death. I even had a thought, and I said, man, I couldn't even kill myself if I wanted to right now, because I'm so sick that I can't even get up out of bed and figure out a way to do that. And in that moment, I knew exactly what my parents had experienced, that insanely anguishing pain. And then I heard a voice in my head, and it told me that I could request what I wanted fixed. And I was in the throes of desperation. So I was like, okay, strange voice, I want to no longer be physically dependent on this substance. And so they told me to lay back and to count backwards from 10. And then as I did, these 2 little men appeared in my mind's eye. And they were these little white men. They had these bulbous noses, and they were wearing white lab coats. And they had these little lawnmowers that manifested in front of them. And I watched these 2 men take off in separate directions. And they started walking through every crevice of my mind. And as they walked through the crevices of my mind, I felt these intense hot tingles take over my whole head. And then it felt like somebody had drawn X's across my forehead, and then a plunger on the crown of my head, and then this bright white flash. I was instantaneously healed out of day 3 of withdrawal. I mean, it was the most incredible, incredible thing. I jumped out of bed. I threw myself on the floor. I began praying. I don't know how to pray. I'm crying out to the Creator. How could this be happening? I don't believe in you. I don't believe in this. You could not have picked a more unworthy subject to bestow this kind of grace on. And for the contrast, in my life before my healing and my awakening, I was an atheist, a drug addict, a prostitute, a liar, a manipulator, a thief. I was a racist. I was a rapist. I had caused every kind of harm to other human beings that you could ever conceptualize. And there I was, completely loved and bestowed with unconditional grace, healing, love, acceptance. It was incredible. And, so for me, one of the big takeaways from that experience is that there is no such thing as condemnation. I lived my life causing nothing but harm, and I'm still loved by the divine. And that for me is one of the biggest takeaways of my experience. I could have continued to live my life causing harm to other people, but for me, living my life in a more righteous, spiritually aligned way, it feels better. This is the feeling that I was chasing with drugs my whole life. This is the feeling that I get today just by being of service to others.
Yeah, you said no. You say no condemnation, but in the same time, when you were doing your life review, you had a lot of condemnation. You said that was terrible for you, right?
It felt very painful, but it's just a moment, like there's no such thing as time in
Because there
spirit.
is no
So
time. This is
you're
why maybe you've been condemned over there for a millennia, but you don't know about it because it was one moment.
That's totally true. But again, the whole world is just a series of stories and beliefs. So these are the beliefs that make me feel like I have purpose in my human experience, which I think is one of the main points for me, is finding purpose and
Yeah.
finding passion for being a human, because it can be very dense to be a human.
Oh my gosh. Now that's. I'm going to come back to the physical again. You abuse your mind, your brain cells for 35 years, not from the age 13 to the 35. That's 22 years, really heavily. And then everything just rejuvenated. God rejuvenated your brain cells because you are brilliant. I mean, I don't see anything. It's amazing because you've been killing your brain cells with those drugs. And then everything, you see how our body and mind miraculously works. If you want, you fill yourself with light and you are rejuvenating. I'm sorry. Again, it's a choice. You made a choice to do that. Yeah, so
Yeah,
that's
and I am no more special than anyone else. We are all infinitely special and we all have access to this. If it could happen for me, I know that it could literally happen for anybody. I mean, I can't even explain to you what kind of depraved animal I was before my experience, but it's not the person that's sitting here today. I had never had a conscious thought. I didn't have any vocabulary. The extent of my vocabulary before my awakening was this long laundry list of drugs that I used and how much money it cost to be with me. That was it. I never had any other thoughts because I didn't need any other thoughts. And today, I'm a pretty, like well-spoken person. I like to think anyway. I've got tons of conscious thoughts going in and out of my mind on a minutely basis. So for me, the idea of spontaneous healing, I know that it's possible for anybody. It's just about the belief systems. So for me, I was in a state of complete and utter desperation. So I was willing to believe anything. But a lot of people have thought processes that are put in their mind that they can't heal themselves. They need to go to a doctor. They trust a stranger, a doctor, to give them what they need to get better.
they think that they trust a professional, but it's a good point. You said they trust a stranger. This is a different, completely different angle to look at it.
Yeah, yeah. And I have like some resentments against Western medicine and stuff like that. But for me, like for me, I know that I have the power to heal inside of me because it's just around my thoughts. So if I believe that healing exists, then healing will exist. And I'm not saying that I haven't had physical things happen to me, but I know that they're actually energetic things that are happening to me. So I had some issues with my gallbladder. I even went to a Western doctor because I was so hung up. I was like, I can't keep going through this. What am I going to do? And I put my energy into believing a doctor. And it was really just something energetic that needed to pass through me. But now I have $9,000 in medical bills to help me understand that I don't need a doctor. I can get through things on my own.
So after this experience, you think that you found your purpose in life. What is it?
So purpose is not rigid. My purpose changes every hour of every day. Right now, my purpose is to connect with you and to share my testimony. And I love that part of my purpose. I love being able to share about the transformation that's taken place in my life. But in the next hour, my purpose might be to smile at a stranger on the street. The only thing that I know for certain around my purpose is that it's to be of service to other people in whatever way that is. So sometimes my purpose is to be the most authentic version of myself so that other people have the courage to be their most authentic selves. I come out here and I spill all my guts out because I know that there's no such thing as condemnation. So if it doesn't resonate for one person, that's okay because it might touch one other person. And that's really what's important. So I thought that my purpose had to be this title. My purpose is to be an author. My purpose is to be a leader or whatever it is. But that's not the way that I perceive purpose now. So for now, the way that I perceive my purpose is to be of service to other people and to live my life aligned with spiritual principles like honesty, open-mindedness, willingness, acceptance, tolerance.
Yeah, that's a great answer. By the way, I like the way you said, my purpose at this moment is to connect with you. It's not to talk to you. It's not to tell you the story, but to connect. That's very important. That's different. Did you ever feel like a stranger on this earth?
Wow, I definitely felt like a stranger in my body for the first part of my life. And I never even conceptualized the idea of Earth because I didn't have thoughts that big. But after my awakening, I thought, man, they left me in the wrong place. I can't be here. I can't be on Earth. And I went through many dark nights of the soul, like spiritual depression, not wanting to be inside my body. Today, I have some balance because I found some really amazing spiritual texts. I study A Course in Miracles, and that's a metaphysical text channeled by Jesus, and it's a reprogramming. And that book has really helped me to call Earth my temporary home and embrace it and love it. So, yeah, I think that I have definitely felt out of place in my life. And I think that's why I used drugs for so long, was because I just wanted to feel like I could stand being inside myself and stand being a human.
Did you ever think about suicide when you came back from the NDE?
Oh my goodness. Yes, absolutely. But one of the things that I was downloaded with, and again, like I shared earlier, is that when a person commits suicide, and this is just my belief, they split timelines, because suicide isn't necessarily an exit point in somebody's life. And I know that it's not the exit point in my life. So I have tried to commit suicide in my life. I had two very serious suicide attempts, one at the age of 16 and one at the age of 29. And I woke up in a hospital bed. And that's what I think happens when a person does commit suicide. I think that they wake up in a hospital bed at a reset point in the game, and they're meant to experience it all over again, and they have a chance to make different choices. But when I came back from my experience, I just wanted to go home. And I thought that I had to do recovery to do that. And so I went into a long-term treatment facility, and I kept crying out to God. And I said, okay, God, I haven't used drugs in 7 days. Can you come get me now? And no response. And then I'd make it to another milestone. Okay, God, it's been 2 months. I still haven't used drugs. Please come pick me up. And nothing would happen. And so after the dust settled and I started to actually integrate my spiritual experience and find the books that were going to help me along the way and the mentors that were going to teach me along the way, I realized that it's not about leaving Earth and going back to heaven. It's about bringing heaven here. And so every second of every day, I make a conscious decision to invite heaven into my experience. And so I no longer want to leave Earth. I no longer want to leave my body. I want to experience this human experience for as long as I can. And that's a shift that I never thought would happen.
Why would people ever think about suicide? Because you've been in that situation. This is why I'm asking you, because you've been in that frame of mind. Your parents, of course, they were. Why would ever person think about suicide when they can die for something? Why would you just end your life like that? What's the thought process when you are thinking about suicide?
So here's an analogy. Have you ever closed your finger in a door? Like slammed your finger in a door or a window? Do you know that intense pain? What are you thinking about in the moment of slamming your finger in a door? Are you thinking, I have a family, I have a life worth living, I could go die for something, I could be heroic? No, all you're thinking is, holy F, this hurts and I want this pain to stop. And I think that that's a really good analogy for what it's like before somebody commits suicide. They're not thinking about anything else except for the immense amount of pain that they're in, and they just want the pain to stop. They're not thinking about solutions or resources or connection or anything. They just are so tired of being in pain, and so they just give up. And I think that there's so many great resources out there. Every year I go to a conference for the American Foundation for Suicide Prevention, and it's a National Survivors of Suicide Loss Day. And we get together and we connect. And, obviously it's a community that is a very dense community because it's so heavy, but so many people have lost loved ones to suicide, and nobody needs to die that way. And so if you are struggling with some sort of suicidal ideation or you're having those feelings, please reach out to me and let me connect you to some resources that will help. And or you can Google it. Like there really is so much help out there, and it's just about taking that first step to get the help that you need, because it's out there, and trust that spirit is guiding that help to you for whatever reason.
Well, thank you very much, Betty. And the moment I ask you the question and you start responding, I remembered my aunt. She committed suicide. She was 73 years old. She had pancreatic cancer here in Eastern Europe. And she was so much in pain that she just went and she jumped from the eighth floor building. This is the pain. So this is where she decided to go. She couldn't bear it anymore. So this is the answer to my question, which I ask. All right. One more question, a couple more, and that's it. Are you afraid of death?
Definitely not. I won't say that I welcome it, because I'm not ready to leave yet, but death is just a door. Death is not what we think it is.
Yeah, this is why so many spiritual pictures in the spiritual literature with a door, a light coming through the door, and you are ready to step under this door. And we're all going to see what's behind that door one day. Now, What's your definition of freedom?
Wow, that's such a great question. My definition of freedom is, I think autonomy is a big part of freedom for me. So the ability to be able to be in charge of my own destiny and to not have to conform to somebody else's idea. You know, I'm a spiritual soldier on my own path, and it doesn't have to conform to anybody else's. Now, obviously, I find people in community that I feel connected to, but for me, freedom is really being able to have that choice, to be able to decide the aspects of my own journey and the people that I allow into my experience.
Okay, and one more thing. If you'd like people to contact you or to find out more about you, if you'd like to share the information.
Yes. So I'm on all social media. My handle is Buddha Betty. It's a play on words. So I'm on YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, TikTok. Please feel free to reach out to me. I also have a coaching business. So if you're somebody who's looking for transformation or you're dealing with aspects of addiction and you'd like to start to clear some of that out, that's definitely another part of my purpose here, is to assist people in doing that. So, or I can connect you to communities that will help you as well. And, you know, I really, really love connecting with other people. If I'm not able to connect individually, I love at least being able to connect you to community.
So at this point in your life after NDE, you perceive connection with people like you connect with the souls. They're not people anymore, they are
Yeah.
souls for you, right? Okay, Betty. Well, we're going to conclude the podcast here. This was beautiful. I loved it. Thank you very much.
I'm so excited. Thank you
Me
so
too.
much. You had such amazing questions. I've never been asked those things before. So I really appreciate you exercising your creativity and really getting down into some of the really amazing aspects of just the human experience.
Thank you, Betty. Thank you very much. So nice to meet you.
You as well. Thank you so much.
Thank you for watching About Freedom Show. I really appreciate you. Click on one of the videos below and don't forget to subscribe.